I'm Katey Rich from CinemaBlend.com.
And I'm Nathaniel Rogers from FilmExperience.net.
And today we are talking about Inglourious Basterds, the new movie from Quentin Tarantino.
Yeah, we've already had the whole conversation we're about to recreate for you.
It'll be just as good the second time, I promise. So we're going to try and go easy on the plot description just because it's more fun to...
Yeah, it's more fun to watch it develop as the trailers and what you've heard about it and even the title itself aren't all that descriptive of what the movie actually is.
I would argue even misleading.
The first chapter title is, as we've been discussing, maybe a better title because in a way this is completely revisionist and completely a fable.
And it also has a lot of references to the Ennio Morricone movies. Like, no,
right.
Yeah, that's not the composer. That's Sergio Leone. I keep saying.
But the music is
Yeah.
definitely distracting in that way. Like,
Yeah,
you're definitely thinking of the spaghetti western.
Yeah, it's got that spaghetti western vibe to it, which is...
The first scene takes place in a dairy farm in Nazi-occupied France.
In 1941 or so, early.
Yeah. Remember, we don't have any clue what the movie's going to be about because, as we said, it's misleading.
And all we know is Brad Pitt, and Brad Pitt is in the scene, so it's
He's
like, all right,
in the scene.
don't know who this is.
We go through this whole scene where Colonel Hans Landa, who's played by Christoph Waltz, who you've undoubtedly heard about from this movie. He won Best Actor at Cannes. He's coming to the farm to investigate if the farm is hiding Jews. The whole scene is basically an interrogation scene, and it's a very lengthy scene.
Really long.
It's very tonally different than the rest of the movie that follows.
Somewhat.
Because it's very serious, and you don't really know yet what the movie is going to be.
Yeah.
And the movie keeps shape-shifting a little, actually, as it's told in chapter form, and the chapters are quite separate.
Yeah. Oh, the scenes are separate from each other. Even within the same chapter, you'll get completely tonally different scenes.
Yeah.
But you open with this one, and it's not just an interrogation scene, it's a really unconventional interrogation. Like Hans Landa, who tells the guy that his nickname is the Jew Hunter, is really cordial, he's asking for milk, and he's not intense at all, he doesn't have his gun, he's incredibly polite, and so relaxed about it, but you get this sense of mounting dread as the scene goes on.
Yeah, and Tarantino, he can direct the hell out of anything. Some people theorize that movies should not take you should never think about the man behind the camera. But that's almost impossible to do with certain directors.
Yeah.
Such is the case here. And I was actually, even in that first scene, already super anxious about when is the next edit?
Yeah.
Where's the camera gonna go? And it already had me thinking about this is a movie and how on earth is he sustaining this much tension for this long dialogue scene.
Yeah, a lot of people compare that scene to Hitchcock, which I think is completely apt, and Hitchcock's another director that really makes you think about what he's doing behind the camera, like, self-consciously and stuff like Rogue, and even in Rear Window and other movies like that. So it definitely has some of those influences, and every time he moves the camera, you feel how deliberate it is, and how he's structuring the scene. And then it pays off, the dread really pays off in violence, which many of the scenes of Inglourious Basterds do. You go from there to chapter 2. Strange that it's the title of the movie is chapter 2.
We meet Brad Pitt playing Lieutenant Aldo Raine, and he's a hick.
Yeah, he's from Tennessee.
And that's where you get the bad spelling of the title.
Is it? Is that where it comes from? Because he's supposed to be illiterate?
Yeah.
I had not heard that before.
Yeah, you can tell the way he talks, like if he spelled out Nazi, it would be spelled with a T.
Yeah, Nazi. Yeah.
That scene didn't work as well for me.
It's you've seen it in the trailers a lot, and I remember in that first trailer, it was like, what is Brad Pitt doing? He's like, I want my scalps, and he's like...
And then he does that lean in.
Yeah, he steps...
I gotta have my scalps or something.
Yeah, exactly, yeah. And it felt just as stagey in the film. It feels like a parody of a war movie.
Right.
And
which, to some extent, Inglourious Basterds is.
Yeah, definitely. But it doesn't... Brad Pitt is having fun, clearly. But he just... It wasn't engaged by him at all.
Yeah. The Inglourious Basterds, thankfully, it is kind of a sidebar. It's very much an ensemble film. Many other characters that aren't part of the Bastards, thankfully, because the Bastards are the least interesting part.
Yeah, and the scene that's also been seen a lot is them beating the Nazi in the head with the baseball bat, and it really reconciled my feelings about the violence in this movie, because it's taking very deliberate glee in killing Nazis. But it's got a really, like we mentioned, it's got this great Nazi character, Hans Landa, who's just giving a lot more, that's much more interesting than just beating Nazis to death.
since the tone of the movie is kind of parodic, that sort of excuses for me.
So you think it's a parody of movies that take glee and violence?
Well, I think Tarantino takes glee and violence.
Yeah,
period.
I think so too.
And it's just one of his things
Yeah.
as a filmmaker. Like Kill Bill, people, that was very cartoonishly violent. This isn't so much cartoonishly as just absurdly gory.
Yeah.
For the brief bits.
And it's not reflective of much of the rest of the tone of the movie, which is really thoughtful and complex and dialogue heavy.
Yeah, and as you may expect, since it's a Tarantino film, it is very much about the dialogue and the way the story is told. He's such a idiosyncratic storyteller that it's sort of told in these sidebars.
And that's what's so good about him, is he's taking things from all over the place, and it's a mess in a lot of ways, but because he's got such a command of the conversations and the way the movie's put together, it works. So chapter 3, we catch up with someone who we met briefly in that opening scene in the farmhouse, Shoshana, who is a French-Jewish girl, and she's escaped and is now taking on another name and runs a movie theater in Paris. And she's really into German filmmakers, and she's kind of a Tarantino stand-in, where she talks about G.W. Pabst and all this stuff. And
in Paris she meets a German movie star, sort of.
Slash soldier.
Best left discovered to the movie how that all develops.
Yeah.
But it's at this point in the movie, and we're not going to give much of the plot away from then on, but it's in this point in the movie that you begin to realize this is not really a World War II film about Nazi hunters. It's really a movie about movies. Yeah,
I think a lot of Tarantino's movies have that moviness about them.
But this is even more boldly proclaiming.
It's about literally the power of film.
Yes. So cinephiles, movie buffs, these people will definitely enjoy this section of the movie.
Yeah.
There's a lot of film references, a lot of directors' names thrown out. There's even a reference to film criticism that is not negative.
Yes.
Which I thought was...
Wait, we should talk about that in the 4th chapter.
Well, let's not give away how it
comes
up.
Okay.
He's not scared of film criticism. He's very, he's very confrontational in some of his interviews about it. Like the last interview I saw with him, he was talking about how film critics have to confront his work. They're sort of defined by how they react to his work.
You can love it or hate it. You just get to choose whether or not you're going to put up with it or not.
But film criticism referenced and not in a negative way, which was a joy.
Yeah, not in a negative way. There's a film critic who is a heroic character.
Right.
And that's awesome. So when we meet Shoshana, she's running this movie theater. She meets this movie star played by Daniel Bruhl, who you might know from Goodbye Lenin. He was in The Educators. He's a German movie star. And he's smitten by her. It's fascinating because he's playing a Nazi who you kind of like, and Hans Landa, who's this really awful character you also kind of like. So you've got these two Nazi figures who you really like against your better judgment, which is a really fascinating thing to have happen. And the woman playing Shoshana, whose name I can't remember.
Melanie Laurent.
Well done. Yeah. She's great too.
He tends to inspire such vivid things from actors. Like you can tell that they're sort of hooking into. There's some sort of freedom that they seem to have in his movies where they always seem to be enjoying themselves. Yeah. But not in a distracting way, in a sort of like a character, shaping a character way.
Even Brad Pitt, even though we didn't like him that much, you can tell he's digging into that and really letting himself loose in that way.
And he has a couple great moments.
He does.
To be fair.
I think he really shined in the last part of the film. Another one of the sections that really gets into strong performances, you meet Diane Kruger's character in chapter 4. In interest of spoilers, we're not going to say what that is or what the bulk of it is. But that section contains another really stunning in-one-room dialogue scene, which takes place in an underground pub in rural France, where you meet Diane Kruger's character. She's playing a German movie star. There's a lot of movie stars in this movie.
A movie about movies.
And she's speaking in all German, and she's great. Like, I think I'd only seen her before in Troy. Which is a terrible start for anyone. Yeah. Again, it's long, it's full of talk, it's a lot of dancing around the subject, it's parts of it take on the nature of an interrogation, but they're never talking about what's actually there. And again, a lot of really excellent editing. The way that Tarantino structures it, and the way that he puts the characters together, and the way that he establishes the space in this area, and then kind of turns it all around. And then the tension pays off again.
Yeah, one thing that I think is really funny about Tarantino as a filmmaker is that editing himself is so not his strength, but his movies are always beautifully edited. Sally Menke, they're they're edited so superbly.
Even though they're 2.5 hours long.
Even though they're 2.5 hours long.